Welcome to the Daily Freedomist Show on Tuesday, April 20th, 2020. This is your host, Paul Gordon Collier, coming at you live, unless you're watching the replay, from Freedomist.com. And let's just get a glimpse of some of the stories that we won't be talking about today because, well, we cover the top 6 stories that our audience seems to like. Aborted fetuses to once again be utilized in research program after Biden XO. That's our Christian Headlines report. We won't be talking about that today. New breakthrough with organic crystals could pave way for light-powered machines. That's our Freedomist Headlines report. Won't be talking about that today. Then we have, where is the last one here that we won't be talking about? Oh, yes. We won't be talking about, Walter Mondale, dead at 93. Former VP presidential nominee remembered. That's our top stories report. And if you want to see all of these stories, you can go to Freedomist.com. And if you want to see all of the links in their rawest, well, in their aggregated form, but not in the report forms, then click on the top right link, NewsWatch page, and you can scroll on down. You notice you can see you get our Freedomist shorts on the left-hand column. You get our Daily Freedomist Show replay up above in the right-hand column, and then you get all this juiciness. You get to look and see at a glimpse all of the world's news as aggregated by me. I go through about, roughly speaking, about 1,000 to 1,500 links a day that I aggregate and produce these daily reports for. So with that in mind, let's get ready for our first story. Nancy Pelosi says Maxine Waters should not apologize over Chauvin comments. And this is from our topic report titled, Nancy Pelosi encourages protesters to follow Maxine Waters' call to, quote, get more confrontational, unquote. And the topic that we're looking at is Maxine Waters Chauvin protest National Guard shooting. That's what we're really covering here. So this is our top story that we're going to cover here is Nancy Pelosi defends Maxine Waters' comments calling on protesters to, quote, get more confrontational, unquote. This is from the right here from the Blaze. The excerpt here. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, refused calls to censure Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat California, after she called on protesters to be more, quote, confrontational, unquote, if former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is not found guilty of murdering George Floyd. Let's just go a little bit deeper on this one. Pelosi was asked by reporters Monday if Waters should resign. Stop that pop-up. Or if Waters should apologize for her comments, and she defended her Democrat colleague. Maxine talked about confrontation in the manners of the civil rights movement. You're talking about a situation in which people have already been burning down buildings, setting businesses on fire, and she wants them to get even more escalating. I don't buy that. That's just ghost language right there. I myself think we should take our lead from the George Floyd family. They've handled this with great dignity and no ambiguity or lack of misrepresentation by the other side. When pressed about whether Waters should apologize, she said, no, I don't think she should apologize. Of course not. Remember, this is the woman that when Donald Trump set the FBI folks to try to guard the U.S. courts in the U.S. court buildings, federal court buildings, to guard them against people trying to burn them down, and they would later actually burn. Well, I don't know if they successfully burned down federal buildings, but they certainly caused great havoc to the buildings. She referred to them as Donald Trump's Gestapo. So remember, this is the woman has no problem inciting people to violence. But then, these factional folks on the main, there's a lot of that going on. Other stories in following the Maxine Waters Chauvin protest National Guard shooting, we have from Free Beacon, which is also from the right here. we have, and I do have, I did kind of ended up picking a number of stories from the right here and just a couple from the left, so I do apologize for that. But that does happen. Sometimes I miss. Abhorrent Chauvin trial judge slams Maxine Waters' call for civil unrest. And Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill reproached Maxine Waters on Monday for interfering in the trial of Derek Chauvin and encouraging civil unrest in Minneapolis, saying the Congresswoman's rhetoric violated her oath of office and disrespected the rule of law. Let's see what he said in full here. There he is. Let's see. Beast mode. I hate this. I'm sorry. It's this whole beast mode. Like, he just destroys her. Let's see what he says here. Let's just see. Beast mode. Okay, and then he's got a little clicker thing here. Right. Sure, why not? I think we're past that point, but okay. Totally beast mode. Abhorrent. You notice they have here beast mode, and he's like, listen, it's abhorrent, but it doesn't, we're fine here. They've been told not to watch the news. That's enough for me. How is that beast mode? I don't. Oh gosh. I'm sorry. You're all just the partisan factionalism is causing everyone to leave their, if there is such a thing as common sense, and I'm not sure at this point. Everybody on all sides are, they're just chasing after the clicks and the dramas and the grabby grabs. Let's get through the rest of these headlines real quick. CBS attacks trial judge for rebuking Maxine Waters' call to violence. And that's from Newsbusters. From legal insurrection, Representative Maxine Waters' threats may result in this whole trial being overturned on appeal. And that's, there's that headline. And, we got a little bit of friction here. Rashida Tlaib. Waters' remarks, quote unquote, shameful for non-white communities that rely on police. Yeah. I mean, that's a valid point there, Rashida Tlaib, because she doesn't have to live in these areas where she might actually be inciting people, encouraging people to take violent action against their in essence, against their neighbors, against their family businesses, and all these other things. Maxine Waters asked for police protection during trip where she urged being confrontational from Red State. Tucker Carlson says Maxine Waters guilty of greater incitement of violence than Donald Trump. Newsweek.com. I don't know if either one is necessarily directly. If you go by the letter of the law, I don't know if either one is really guilty of either of that. But certainly, it's the rhetoric that nobody really cares about, to what that does to. When you're speaking to millions of human beings and you say such things, whether it's Donald Trump or Maxine Waters, you're speaking to people with an average IQ of 100, and many of them are already ticked off. So people are not very, dare I say it, mindful of the consequences of the words. But I'm not necessarily for rigid interpretation of what we should interpret as incitement of violence, because then you're empowering the police state. And finally, Kevin McCarthy announces resolution to censure Maxine Waters as he does nothing about Matt Gaetz. And that's from politicsusa.com. And there you go. Let's get to our next story. EU sounds alarm over Ukraine-Russia tensions. This is from our topic report. Russian nuclear bombers, warships descend on Ukraine as EU warns of World War threats. And our top story, or top link that we're gonna feature here is from thesun.uk. Russia plans major warship assault to cut off Ukraine's water supply as Putin amasses fleet in the Black Sea. From the sun.co.uk, Nean Kavanaugh excerpt, Russia is planning a major warship assault to seize Ukraine's water supply, military sources claim. Ukraine military insiders believe that the most likely attack will be maritime and land assault in the south from Russian-occupied Crimea. 12 warships during an international interfleet moved from the Caspian Sea to, well, I'll get to that. Russian nuke bombers and fighter jets blitz Ukraine in massive military drills as war fears grow. That's from the sun.uk again. That's 2 in a row from the sun. Well. And then we get from Tariq Tahir, Russia has developed nuclear bombers and fighters in a show of deployed. They have developed them, but long ago. Deployed nuclear bombers and fighters in a show of strength as fears of war with Ukraine mount. Video of exercise ordered by Vladimir Putin shows aerial strike training on a mock enemy as Russian troops continue to mass on the border. EU warns spark could set off escalation at Ukraine borders. ABC News from ABC News. And their excerpt, the European Union's foreign policy chief says that in the face of the military buildup of Russian troops near the Ukraine border, it will only take a spark to set off a confrontation. EU estimates 150,000 Russian troops near Ukraine's border, from Washington Post. Despite the developments, Borrell says, after a virtual meeting with the EU foreign ministers, that for the time being there is no move in the field of more sanctions to be imposed on Russia. Kiev says all sides reaffirmed commitment to ceasefire in eastern Ukraine after talks. That's from todayonline.com. From Yahoo News, we have leaked Ukraine defense memo reveals scope of Russia's aggression. And Axios, this is U.S. ambassador refuses to leave Russia despite Kremlin warning. The United States ambassador to Russia is refusing to leave the country after the Kremlin advised him to return home following new Biden administration sanctions. 2 sources briefed on the situation tell Axios. Now, that excerpt is not in line with the headlines, but that happens. So Russia has been holding last-minute military exercise near commercial shipping lanes in the Black Sea that threaten to strangle Ukraine's economy, according to an internal document from Ukraine's Ministry of Defense reviewed by Axios. Okay. World War III fears. Macron calls for red lines on Russia as Putin sends troops to border. The Europhile French president... okay. The Europhile French press. Oh, wait, who's this by? It's Feed Proxy. This is Express.uk. Okay. The Europhile French president insisted that countries must be ready to impose sanctions in case of unacceptable behavior, referring to Vladimir Putin's warmongering actions in Ukraine. In Ukraine, the long-standing Russian president has sent thousands of troops, tanks, and other heavy weapons in Ukraine's eastern border as the tentative 2015 ceasefire looks likely to end. What do they want from us? This is from The Guardian. As Russian forces amass, a Ukrainian frontier town feels fear and despair. And this is written by Oksana Gretsenko-Marinka. Vera Basova stands by her house holding a local newspaper. The front page headline says, Russia is bringing tanks to the eastern Ukrainian front. What do they want from us? Why are they dragging those tanks here? Well, the reason that they're doing it is because Ukraine is falling under a Western orbit. And you can't have Ukraine fall under a Western orbit, especially given the history of Ukraine. So a little bit more into this story here, because this is my top story here. All right. Well, okay. Ukraine's military insiders believe that the most likely attack will be a maritime and land assault in the south from Russian Crimea. We estimate one of the Russian scenarios could be an amphibious and air assault from occupied Crimea to seize water supply facilities in South Ukraine to provide water to Crimea. I just want to remind you what the situation here is when we look at the image here of Crimea. And there you see Crimea. That's Russia up here, okay? Here we go. Here's a better picture. See this? Russia. See that? Russia? Russia has access to the Black Sea here, but it has vital ports in here, and it needs to be able to go into the Black Sea from those ports with ease. And it does not need the West to have a significant land power, land possession, or land occupation, in essence, in the middle of the Black Sea, which is a vital waterway for Russia. So, as a nation state, Russia cannot abide the West being there. So that's what's going on, folks. This is just the reality of power, as I'm going to say over and over again for the story, to try to drill it into your heads. As nation states go, Russia has no choice but to assure that Ukraine doesn't become inevitably, where the West would inevitably want it to become down the road, a NATO power. Once it becomes part of NATO, that presents a real existential threat to Russia. I'm not countenancing the Russian nation state. I'm just saying the bellicose language used by everybody and the moralisms used by everybody, all of it just conceals the cold, hard reality of power that the Russian nation state cannot abide this. Can't abide it. It just can't. All right, let's get to our next story. All right. Derek Chauvin trial handed to jury. And this is a topic report. As Chauvin trial closes, jury sits in the crosshairs of factional Tinder threaten. In the crosshairs of factional Tinder. I don't know what I was writing there. Oh, I got cut off. Factional Tinder threatening world war. Threatening. That's right. Threatening the nation. And this is. I don't want to overplay this. Is this a existential threat to the stability of the United States of America? I don't think so, but I do think that it is the significant bellwether as far as the stabilization of the United States of America going forward, in terms of how everybody reacts regarding the nature of the verdict, whether he's guilty or not guilty. And this is our topic report for the topic Minneapolis Chauvin trial fallout tracker. And our top link is prosecution, defense both appeal to jurors' common sense in closing arguments as Chauvin murder trial. This is from CBC.ca. Now, I picked this the top link there, especially because they use the term common sense, and this is something that common sense is a term that's used to cut off dissent, to cut off argument. It's like saying trust science is another way. Nobody really has a corner on exactly what common sense is. Common sense is when you don't have the proof and you're making an emotional appeal. And so if both the prosecution and the defense are making an appeal for common sense, it tells you that neither side is, I would say, it tells you that neither side is really all that confident in the cases that they presented. And I don't know. I feel for the human beings. There are 12 jurors that are going to decide this, and I can't imagine being one of the jurors and actually having the boldness to have an opinion of my own, to actually, from a Christian standard, we are called righteousness, justice. Justice is not favoring the poor over the wealthy or the power or the establishment. Justice is not, it's just not, well, justice is not favoring anyone. So if the poor is wrong, then the poor gets convicted. If the establishment is wrong, then the establishment gets convicted. So if you're a Christian and you're on this jury, your commitment should be to justice. And the justice would be to make as an informed decision as you can about whether they've proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt or not. And I don't know. And I will tell you that my interest in following this trial in some detail is really not all that great. And the reason is I'm much more interested in the reactions than I am in the trial itself, because the truth of the trial is, at this point, it's pretty arbitrary. And you'll have conversations with factionals, whether they're on the left or the right, and their opinions vary so greatly. It's hard to actually form a real opinion. Even if you watch the trial itself, it's hard for you to form an objective from a Christian perspective, a justice opinion, based on any evidence that's being shared. As you know, and I followed it to some degree, and I look in briefly, and I think, oh, okay, well, there you go. Can't really make hide nor tail of it. But the CBEA.ca says Derek Chauvin used grossly disproportionate force against George Floyd when he pinned a 46-year-old black man's neck and back with his knees. A Minneapolis court heard on Monday, and jurors need only believe their own eyes and use common sense to render a guilty verdict against the former Minneapolis police officer. This wasn't policing. This was murder. Some other stories now emerging that give you a sense of how people are taking advantage of this crisis to advance their factional interests. So Facebook, this is a corporate nationalist. So corporate nationalists are looking at this as more opportunity to establish their un-God-given right to be the moral censors, the moral authorities of what is right and what is wrong and what is good and bad. And to that end, Facebook, preparing for Chauvin verdict, will limit posts that might incite violence. From the New York Times, Davy Alba writing, Facebook on Monday said it planned to limit posts that contain misinformation and hate speech related to the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged with the murder of George Floyd, to keep them from spilling over into real-world harm. You're not going to make a difference one way or another. Your actions are just going to incite one side to violent tendencies over the other side, but you're not going to stop it. Minneapolis lawmaker proposes law to strip convicted protesters of food stamps, unemployment benefits, and other government programs from the right, from the blaze. A Minneapolis, and this is the right is reporting on this, maybe like it's a good thing. The right, the alleged upholders of the Bill of Rights. When I say the right, this is the terms that these factions use for one another. I think of them all as being far, far authoritarian right by the European classical sense of the term of what they would define as left and right. A Minnesota state lawmaker wants to strip convicted protesters of their access to government programs, including food stamps, student loans, and health care. Republican State Senator David Osmesk authored the legislation as the nation awaits a decision in the jury trial of Derek Chauvin. Okay, I don't want to read the rest there, but wow. So convicted protesters lose. I mean, you want to set that standard. You want to set a standard that we can. You realize Republican lawmaker, quote unquote lawmaker, that the laws that you create will be used against you. So if you actually were to get this passed, then the quote-unquote left could then use these laws to do the same thing to your protesters who are convicted. Other than, well, I don't even know. I don't know that necessarily in general, from a Christian justice perspective, you do the time, you pay the price, and then your rights should be restored. That debate, felons, for instance, losing their gun rights. I don't believe felons, unless they're convicted of a violent crime, should lose their gun rights in perpetuity, or felons that lose their voting rights. And this is along that line. This is a police state mentality. And then to that end, then we have from the left, the Daily Kos. Do you speak English? Minnesota cops add insult to injury when they brutalize journalists of color. And then from Free Beacon from the right, Minneapolis schools to close as city braces for violence. So it's certainly affecting our children. Minneapolis tightens security, National Guard from usatoday.com. From Fox News, Al Sharpton touts private jet before joining George Floyd's family as Chauvin trial concludes. He's just getting that cha-ching-ching. And then the world watches as a Minneapolis jury and braces for reaction to Chauvin trial outcome. And that's a little bit of taste of what's going on even before the verdict has been announced. Let's get to our next story here. China declares they are equal to U.S. in world power. This is an editor's choice report, so we're going to be talking about not just this story, but a few others. But this link is our what is it, fourth most popular link that we've sent out today so far. So the Editor's Choice Report is titled, China pushes for end to American world supremacy, promises, quote, fair, unquote, world order to replace it. And our top story for our editor's picks is China's President Xi calls for end to hegemony and demands, quote, fair, unquote, world order in veiled jab at the U.S. Not really a veiled jab. And this is from RT. That's Russia. So remember that. So Russia's playing a double game there. The Chinese president has spoken of his wish to see a fairer world which isn't dominated by a single country, as he called for an end to the artificial, quote, building of walls, unquote, and decoupling. I'm not going to keep saying quote unquote. You can see the quotes for yourself if you. And decoupling amidst simmering tensions with the U.S. It's not really. I mean, most of the quote unquote simmering tensions are really kabuki theater. I told you that the corporate nationalists that the Biden administration is mostly beholden to. Not that the Biden administration, not that they're all one hegemonic oneness, because there's, like I'll say again and again, there's multiple top leaders in this corporate nationalist coalition that all find convenience to be aligned with one another, but secretly they're still looking at that mirror and only seeing themselves at the end. So there is that dynamic. But as far as China goes, the corporate nationalists in America are mostly aligned with China and see China as a very, very useful ally. But of course, they can't be totally rolling over for China. And at the same hand, in the end, they do want China dead. And China wants them dead. Everybody wants everybody dead, because there can be only one in this ruthless game. So this is a little bit more from RT. China's President Xi calls for an end to hegemony and demands fair world order. The Chinese president has spoken of his wish to see a fairer world which isn't dominated by a single country. Speaking on Tuesday at the annual Boaka Forum for Asia, Chinese leader Xi Jinping said Beijing and its counterparts want to see the development of a fair global order. International affairs should be handled by everyone through consultation, and the future and destiny of the world should be controlled by all countries. He doesn't mean that. He means China. It should be controlled by China. The world should be fair, not overbearing. I mean, I agree with this, but he doesn't mean any of this. A big country must look like a big country and show more responsibility. Hey, I like that band, Big Country in a Big... Never mind. I'm sorry. That's wrong. Let's go to other stories in our editor's pick here. We have the FBI investigating drones that swarmed towns in the Midwest from Futurism. Dan Robitsky writing, but the investigation was called off, leaving local residents to hunt for their own answers. Swarm spotting in December 2019 and January 2020. Mysterious swarms of drones buzzed around the skies over Nebraska, Colorado, and Kansas, alarming both residents and local law enforcement. I remember when this happened back in the day. Years later, The Guardian reports, let's get more on this one. This is interesting. Of course it is. Like what you see? No. Years later, I mean, I actually do like futurism in general. The Guardian reports the sightings remain a complete mystery, and some deny they ever happened at all. Of course, it's what you do. Just no, man. You know, gaslighting. Gaslighting is a thing. It's real. Even though people do abuse the term, it is real nonetheless. A short-lived investigation involving the FBI, the U.S. Air Force, the Federal Aviation Administration, and 16 police forces was called off in January 2020 when the sighting stopped, leaving people in the area seeking answers on their own. During the sightings, local residents and police would sometimes report dozens of drones in the sky in a single night, suggesting that some sort of coordinated effort was occurring. The drones were reportedly both larger and faster from what a hobbyist would be flying. That led to speculation that a government, either the U.S. or some foreign power, was engaging in surveillance or tech tests around an unsuspecting public. Yeah. A global tipping point for reigning in tech has arrived. Now, this is a story that really could easily turn into a whole topic report. Okay, whatever. You're not going to let me see this. Screw you. Screw you guys. I'm going home. All right. From New York Times on December 9th, the Federal Trade Commission in nearly every state filed bipartisan lawsuits accusing Facebook of acting auto-competitively. Okay, that's better. I wonder if auto-competitively can be a word. We could figure out what it would mean. Anti-competitively. Well, it's all about anti-competition. Anti-competitionism is at the heart of all of the authoritarian forms of government and authoritarian forms of markets that there are today. The fascistic, corporate nationalist powers that have emerged in America, they have emerged because at the heart of it is a desire not to have to compete with anyone. So less than a week later, European policymakers introduced a competition law and new requirements for blocking online. And this is see, on one hand, the competition law, and then here, new requirements. So on one hand, they want a competition law. On the other hand, the states are happy to have corporate nationalists do their dirty work, do their censorship for them. That's essentially, and that, by the way, is classical fascism. That is, now, you could argue whether they're actually fascism, because the argument is whether, is it the states that are zooming the markets or the markets zooming the states? In this case, it's not necessarily classical fascism, as I said before, because I think it's more the markets controlling the states than the states controlling the markets. That it's really the markets, the quote-unquote markets, that are in control. And these are not free markets. These aren't quote-unquote capitalist markets. These are fascistic markets at this point. Highly fascistic markets in which the exchange of value is entirely within two frames, coercive and cooperative, not consensual. There's very little consensuality in our markets today, and that's where you get actual quote-unquote free market, where you have consensual exchange. Cooperative exchange, which is where a lot of quote-unquote capitalists lie, they're happy with cooperative exchange, but my brother Bill, for instance, and him and Ralph Benko have written the Capitalist Manifesto, which outlines a path to actual consensual exchange capitalism as opposed to cooperative exchange capitalism. But cooperative exchange is basically when you simply have limited options, and you call that the free market. And that's what we have here. Nobody in the world is afraid of Joe Biden. So get back to this. So again, blocking the online hate speech. That's fascistic. Nobody in the free world is afraid of Joe Biden, and that's dangerous for us here at home. This is from the right. This is, let's see, who is this? This is from Breitbart. Okay, Breitbart. And then we have Student Success Conference at Michigan State to segregate participants by skin color. And this, I believe, is legal insurrection. No, it's the College Fix. Okay, College Fix. And then woman who found man raping mentally ill victim recorded the attack and posted it on social media instead of saving her. That's from the Sun.uk. And finally, former Virginia Tech soccer player alleges coach forced her off team after standing for national anthem. That is from the Federalist. And well, hey, that's your editor's choice report. All right, let's get to our next story here. By the way, if you want to know what I do for the pause here, I've been turning off. I'm still feeling the effects of my cold, but it's really, really light, but I still have build up. And so after the stories are over, I have to turn my mic off and pause for a second, clear my throat. You guys don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. Let's get to this next story. Putin murdering Navalny, says Biden, EU. And this is a topic report, and the topic report title is Putin critic dying in prison hospital triggers Biden to warn Putin of, quote, dire consequences, unquote, should he die. And this is our topic is Alexei Navalny, hunger strike, Russia. And our top link that we've chosen for this topic report is Russia imposes TV blackout on Alexei Navalny amid fears he could die any day, from the Mirror. This is Will Stewart and Lorraine King joined forces to help write this excerpt for me. Well, not for me, but whatever. Russian state TV has imposed a virtual blackout on coverage on Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny amid claims he could die at any minute in a prison hospital. The imprisoned 44-year-old, a prominent critic of President Vladimir Putin, has been on a hunger strike, and there are planned protests. There's protests all the way around the world. It's the new spectator sport. That's a participatory and spectator sport. It's both of those all in one. It's the biggest teams you can think of. You got thousands of people on each team. It's almost like war. It's pretty close to it. Well, it's not really, but it is. It's pretty close. Joe Biden news. U.S. President warns Putin there will be consequences if Navalny dies. So let's go to this story, because this story I find very intriguing. I think there's a lot of, I accept. Go ahead, have my information. Here we go. And you're not going to show me. Here we go. World on the brink. Biden warns Putin. You're too big. There we go. Biden has warned Vladimir Putin there would be consequences if political rival Alexei Navalny dies in prison. And it says here, let's see, Vladimir Putin may be putting Biden to the test. Speaking today, the U.S. President's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, warned Washington will not hesitate to strike back if Mr. Navalny dies in prison. And then Mr. Navalny's doctors have warned his health is rapidly declining due to a hunger strike, forcing the U.S. to reveal the government is considering a wide range of responses. Forcing them. Mr. Sullivan said Washington is looking at a variety of different costs that we would impose if Navalny dies. And you just want to do that to me. So, you're a mess. Navalny advisor on Kremlin critics' medical test results. Absolutely disastrous. That is from CNN. Then we have Navalny's team calls protest amid reports of failing health from WashingtonPost.com. Russia's Alexei Navalny. Boy, I've seen this thing spelled so many names, so many ways. Actually just two ways. Don't be hyperbolic, Paul. It's with an I or a Y. I chose to go with the Y or the I. Russia's Alexei Navalny is dying in prison. Allies call for national protest from ABC News. Navalny ally says no hope of good news on his health from News 24. Russia moves Navalny to prison hospital amid outcry over Kremlin's critics' health. And Putin critic, that's from Press 24. And then from the Mirror, Putin critic Alexei Navalny taken to hospital after 19 days of hunger strike protest. So what you have here is you have a beautiful opportunity for nation states that are opposed to Russia to use this as a righteous indignation cry to show how bloodthirsty and evil Russia is. And, well, they're doing the same. They're all doing the same. So this is an opportunity for them, and I don't know. I think that in this case, it is pretty hideous of Russia. There's no defense of what Russia has done, arresting this man for basically being a critic of Putin. Remember, in the United States of America, you're still more free than you are in Russia, on the main, in aggregate, in overwhelming aggregate. Now, I don't know how much longer that will be the case, because we have significant number of human beings that exist in certain factions in America that seem ready to adopt policies and standards that fundamentally jettison and destroy King Bill, the Bill of Rights, which is the real rule of law in our land. Russia doesn't have any such thing. I mean, they have a constitution, but it's just, it doesn't have the same kind of ideational power within the hearts of its citizens as the Bill of Rights does in the United States of America. And I still think the Bill of Rights does have that power for a significant portion of Americans, even if they're not willing to use it consistently. They're basically willing to use it to protect their faction, but not other factions, like the way that the quote-unquote right is supporting legislation that would remove the right to government services from people that might be convicted of protest, like in perpetuity. So there's that. That would be a pretty clear Bill of Rights violation of their very citizenship. Certainly, well, anyway, I don't know if I want to say much more about this. I'm tracking this, but I don't have enough details to really be able to go into depth about the degree to which the Russians are being wholly unjust. Well, they're being pretty unjust, but how... Well, let's just say the nuance is missing from this story, but it bears paying attention to. Certainly, paying attention to what's going on with Navalny bears paying attention. And if he dies, I don't think that the Biden administration has many options there. Once again, doing what they did with the Black Sea, where they said they're going to send U.S. troops, U.S. ships, and then they turned them away or they didn't send them. And now they're going to do the same thing again, because there's no effective response the United States has if Navalny does actually die in prison. And there you go. That's that report. Well, let's get ready for this last report. Last report of the day. About ready to wind this show up, my friends. Governor Gretchen Whitmer visits ill father in Florida. And this is a topic report that's titled, Michigan Governor Whitmer has her COVID-19 Marie Antoinette moment with Florida visit. And it's in essence, what she has done here is she has been caught going to Florida, breaking her own COVID rules and her own quarantines and whatnots, going to a state that she has vilified for being open, taking advantage of its open policies regarding COVID-19, to visit her ailing father, when many people have watched, or not actually watched, has had to bear having their family members, their loved ones, die without even being able to attend their funerals, let alone being able to visit them while they were sick. So this is, let them eat cake. This is more than that. That is, let them visit their families? No. Nope. You don't get to visit your families. I get to visit my ailing father, but you don't. And she is one of the most draconian of all of the quote-unquote right-left, the authoritarian right-left. That's what she is, member of the authoritarian right-left. And she, by the way, Gretchen Whitmer, just so we get a little bit of a sense of who Gretchen Whitmer is. Gretchen Whitmer, let's just do this, just for a little bit of Gretchen Whitmer net worth. Gretchen Whitmer net worth. She's net worth. She's a millionaire. So she is, just another one of these rich. But I would. There it says millionaire, but actually that's not really what it accurate at all. Because look down here. This is where she really is. She's a billionaire. She has a net worth of $2.5 million. She comes from a billionaire family. She is one of the Citadelian families that has chosen to put one of their children into the limelight, a dangerous move. So this is who she's coming from. She is the authoritarian right-left that is demoralizing the American poor, trying to convince people that poor Americans should somehow feel less about their lives than they already are. And she uses real racist. I mean, racism does exist. So she's using the plea of the needy, the plea of the poor, to attack the poor from a billionaire standpoint. So she is a classic Marie Antoinette in the truest sense of the term. Gretchen Whitmer sneaks off to Florida to visit her dad, ignoring her own suggestion. This is from Red State. Let's see. You'll keep hearing the phrase, well, there you go, rules for thee, not for me, in regards to how the officials in Michigan are acting with COVID-19. The governor and her staff keep telling everyone how to act, but they seem to not want to follow their own guidelines. And recently it was revealed that she, like I said, broke her quarantine standards and visited her father. This is from appnews.com. Whitmer visits early. Now you know, I wanted to the App News is AP, so I wanted to contrast this headline: Gretchen Whitmer sneaks off to Florida to visit her dad, ignoring her own suggestion. And then you see these two these are basically corporate nationalist-owned entities here. So look at how they're highlighting it. Whitmer visited elderly father in Florida during pandemic. And then from Freep.com, Gretchen Whitmer traveled to visit her ill father. And then from WBCKFM.com, top governor Whitmer aide ignores Whitmer's warning to Michiganders. Governor Whitmer has a problem. What does she do with a top aide of hers who decided to not take her advice she gave to use to us common residents of Michigan and not go to Florida for spring break March of last year? Whitmer appointed Tricia Foster to Michigan's chief operations officer, and she did what Whitmer did. She took a little visit in Florida when she was telling all the we poors not to, while she browbeated us for not being morally superior, for not being morally equivalent to her moral superiorisms. Whitmer defends DHS director vacationing out of state without being fully vaccinated. The head, and this is from Freep.com. Now you see how you play this double game here with the Freep. So Freep here is protecting Whitmer, but here has to put in a little, because remember, well, this is a local, especially the local news outlets, they really, that are owned by corporate nationalists, they really have to play a careful game. They can't be totally out in the open with their corporate nationalism. So you throw out a little bit of, but still, even this title, defends DHS director. And we get the excerpt here. The head of the Michigan Health Department recently traveled to Alabama not Florida, without being fully vaccinated as the state grappled with the worst COVID-19 trends in the nation. That means Department of Health and Human Services Director, oh no, this is a different one. I'm sorry. The other one went to Florida, and then another one went to Alabama. So you got it. So there's two aides, not just one. I'm sorry. I didn't understand this right. Michigan Governor Whitmer urges residents to suspend social activities from Bloomberg.com, so she's still saying that. And she has to urge because the Michigan Supreme Court has hamstrung her. Whitmer aide Facebook post from Florida Beach from Creep.com. And then you get from the left, you get Whitmer, GOP blowback in Michigan leaves smaller set of tools to fight COVID-19 surge. And this is from Talking Points memo there. And I think that's all that I will do for this report. There you go. Gretchen Whitmer report. And with that, folks, we have come to the end of our show. We are at the end. Let's just go back here. And I want to thank you all for watching the show. Hopefully you watched it live. And if you didn't watch it live, what's your problem? And if you didn't watch it live, be sure to watch it live tomorrow. I'm going to start to, I think 10 a.m. is closer that I want to get to the show, although I may try a 9 a.m. start at some point. Just to, I think the earlier the show, the better in general. Well, not at 4 a.m., but in the morning, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 a.m. But I think maybe 9 a.m. might be better. But I might try 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm not sure. But I don't want to do it generally more than 10 a.m. now at this point. Get it out. Get her out there as soon as possible. So if you like the show, be sure you subscribe and share the video and all that, blah, 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 blah. Also go to Freedomist.com, subscribe to Freedomist.com. There's free subscription and there's paid subscriptions, and we need you to pay subscription so that we can continue to provide this service for you, because we're awesome. And at that rate, also make sure you go to the NewsWatch page, and when you go to the NewsWatch page, you can get the latest. You can get the latest Freedomist shorts. You can get the Daily Freedomist Show, the latest Daily Freedomist Show replays, and including links to the playlists, so you can watch them all whenever you want. And you get all the links, and you can decide for yourself what you think about what's going on in the world. And with that, I thank you for joining us. My name is Paul Gordon Collier of Freedomist.